We talk a lot about the farmers in the hemp industry and bringing the farmers to the table. And I absolutely support that 1000%. But there's a lot of other people in our value chain. And some of them are mill workers that spin yarn. Some of them are mill workers that knit fabric or weave fabric or dye and finish fabric. And that fabric needs to get made, and that industry needs to survive here in the United States. I often say that cotton is hemp's BFF. And I truly believe that, and I truly believe that fiber farmers are just as important as any other kind of farming here in the U.S.
That's Guy Carpenter from Bear Fiber in North Carolina. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I will be talking to Guy about his career in textiles and his commitment to rebuilding the American textile industry with a focus on sustainability and equity. We'll hear about his love of hemp and why he thinks hemp is cotton's BFF. We'll talk about hemp in China and why the Chinese are interested in American hemp. All that and more, but first, a few words from our sponsors. Our show today is brought to you with generous support from I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana. I&D Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven, and environmentally focused industrial hemp, food, feed, and fiber company that's providing new opportunities for farmers and rural communities in Montana and across the American West. Check them out at indhemp.com. This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is brought to you in part by the Pennsylvania Hemp Industry Council, the PAHIC, whose mission is to bring industrial hemp back to the farm fields and factories of Pennsylvania. PAHIC has assembled great resources for hemp entrepreneurs and investors to help them navigate this exciting sector of sustainability, including a free toolkit for Pennsylvania hemp entrepreneurs to get their businesses investment ready. Learn more at pahic.org.
The KP4 Hemp Cutter, introducing a revolution in hemp harvesting, setting a new standard for harvesting quality, speed, and efficiency. The KP4 prepares hemp for ideal retting and easy on-field tedding, raking, and baling. Easy to maintain and designed to withstand the punishments of hemp harvesting. The KP4 Hemp Cutter. Available only at hempcutter.com.
This episode is brought to you in part by Impactful Ventures, an investment and incubation company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. At Impactful Ventures, they strive to amplify enterprises that bring innovative, green opportunities to the forefront and empower those making a significant impact for a sustainable future. You can learn more at impactfulventures.org. Okay, welcome back. So here we are. It's the middle of May. Today is May 15th. There's a lot going on here. The weather in Pennsylvania is beautiful right now. It's gardening season. So yeah, good stuff. Anyway, I've got a couple of calendar items here for you this week before we get into my conversation with Guy Carpenter. On Saturday, May 25th, there is a hempcrete workshop up at the Americhon Cast Hemp Shop in Bartow, PA, 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. You'll learn about hempcrete construction and panelization and things like that. June 20th and 21st, you can explore the world of sustainable construction with a 2-day hemp building workshop. This event is hosted by KIF and the Northern Illinois Hemp Hub in Maple Park, Illinois. And on June 29th in Snow Camp, North Carolina, there is a hempcrete workshop at Mudd Daubers School. I will have links to all of these workshops on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, let's go talk to Guy Carpenter at Bear Fiber. Guy Carpenter from Bear Fiber. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah. It's an exciting time of year. You know, I like the spring. I'm getting ready to go to Prague in a few weeks for this European Industrial Hemp Association conference. So, yeah, on my end, things are great. I'm excited to talk to you today. I've been a fan of yours since I first saw you give a presentation in Montana. I think that was the summer of 22. You got up there and I think your first slide was like everything that hemp can do, but then you had everything crossed off except fiber because you're a fiber guy.
That's right.
Yeah. So why don't you give us an introduction? Tell me who you are.
Well, thanks. And first off, I'd like to thank you again for saving my life last year in the Missouri River.
You're welcome.
Bear Fiber, the vision was to incorporate sustainability and longevity into people's lifestyle. We have proprietary methods to produce a cottonized hemp fiber, and we want to work with everyone else all over the country and all over the world to reestablish hemp and make it a new source of natural fibers, a new technical source of natural fibers for better products, and to bring the opportunity for wellness from the rural farm to the fashion industry.
Yeah. There's a lot this plant can offer.
Yeah. You know, we basically are geared to provide fiber and yarn and textile, but we also provide finished garments that are helping to develop the American hemp farm to fiber finished good value chain here in the United States. And we continue to work with global partners, but our market, our focus is the United States. We know that there's export opportunities, but this year I think is going to be the greatest year for hemp fiber so far. I mean, I&D Hemp has refined their process and upscaled the quality of their textile grade fiber to a very high degree. And we've got some other big players coming up. Panda Biotech's opening up in Texas in a few weeks. David Canby still working with his company Biofill in North Carolina. And there's smaller actors who are dedicated and passionate across the country, from St. Louis to the Dakotas to New York State.
Yeah, and you're based in North Carolina, right?
I'm based in North Carolina in the heart of the textile industry and the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Okay. Talk about that textile sort of infrastructure that I guess you have to sort of rebuild that, right? Like from what I understand, things were kind of offshored in the 90s with NAFTA. Well,
that's correct. The American textile apparel industry, as it existed, doesn't exist anymore. Textiles have been remaining rather strong, but apparel, of course, has gone to lowest cost producers, primarily China, but also quite a bit to Latin America. And that part, apparel production, you know, we're not going to see giant factories with 3,000 sewers making T-shirts here in the United States again. But because we provide better needle, the people that we do have are more craftsman oriented and are geared towards higher end. I don't want to use the word, but the L word, luxury goods. We can make better products with better needle here still. The issue with textiles has been a great degree of people, companies have been going out of business, particularly the past 12 months. We've lost 5 spinning mills. We've lost, we're losing a dyeing and finishing operation in South Carolina that's been a bulwark of the industry for decades. So spinning is really a problem, but there are people who are working on solutions to that, not to build it back to the way it was, but to be able to spin better yarns and more technical yarns and also more sustainable yarns, which are what the industry is calling for the most part now.
Yeah. You use the phrase better needle. Can you explain that concept?
Well, there's a big difference between sewing T-shirts and the production numbers that are required to make that profitable, and sewing outerwear such as jackets or even pants for that matter, there's an opportunity to make a higher price and thereby being able to pay workers a better wage. And the goal within our industry is not just to be more sustainable and more environmentally correct, but our goal, as are many of the colleagues I work with in the industry, is to make sure that people are achieving a living wage and a good wage if they're good workers. I mean, it should be equitable. And, we talk a lot about the farmers in the hemp industry and bringing the farmers to the table. And I absolutely support that 1,000%. And I believe in that 1,000%. But there's a lot of other people in our value chain. And some of them are mill workers that spin yarn. Some of them are mill workers that knit fabric or weave fabric or dye and finish fabric. And that fabric needs to get made, and that industry needs to survive here in the United States. I often say that cotton is hemp's BFF. And I truly believe that, and I truly believe that fiber farmers are just as important as any other kind of farming here in the U.S.
Yeah, amen to that. So are you working with other bast fibers? I mean, you mentioned cotton, although it's not a bast fiber. Do you work in flax, or, talk about some of the other fibers you like to work with?
I have worked with flax, and I like flax a lot. I have a number of garments that are linen, or linen hemp blends, or linen cotton blends. I've worked with jute, with sisal, and with all the others that are basically available. I've done a little bit of dabbling with pineapple and banana and all that, but so far the raw material availability has limited our opportunities to explore in that direction. But we also work with some man-made fibers. I mean, not all man-made fibers are bad. Tencel is made from wood, of course, the lyocell's. And then within the Department of Defense and some of the military industry contracts that we try to work with, we've played with Kevlar, hemp Dyneema, hemp nylon, like a Cordura, which is basically a ballistic product almost. So that's how we describe it. But most people know it from their luggage.
Yeah. Well, what kind of sort of attributes does hemp bring to those sort of blends with synthetics?
Well, it brings a greater degree of sustainability, that's for sure. And in many cases, it can bring a reduction in weight. It's rare that it can bring an increase in strength, because that's why synthetics were developed to begin with, to be able to have that strength and elasticity. The reason polyesters exist was to bring stability to fabrics that were being woven, or particularly, but also knit, and the opportunity to create something that was tougher and stronger than it had been seen on the markets before.
Yeah. You mentioned some of those companies that are, integral part of the manufacturing chain, but they're going out of business. What happens to those facilities? What happens to the sort of the chain with those holes in it? How do you sort of grow from that, or what happens?
Most of them, to be honest, unfortunately, are gutted, and the equipment ends up going. Sometimes within the United States, it's sold as used equipment, but more frequently it goes overseas. As far as the facilities themselves, when we're talking about mills that go out of business, unfortunately, if they've gone out of business, they probably haven't spent a lot of money on maintenance on their building in the past years.
Right.
So they ain't that particularly valuable.
Okay. But you're optimistic. You're hopeful that we are rebuilding the textile industry here in the U.S.
I think that there are a number of initiatives that offer more than a glimmer of hope. I mean, that people are pinning their own money on, as well as whatever money they're possibly able to obtain from grants or loans, whatever it might be. I mean, it would be not only criminal for the textile industry to not exist in the United States, but it would be a significant risk to our national defense.
How did you get involved in textiles in the first place?
My traditional answer is liquor, drugs, and fast women. But the main part of it is I have a passion for textiles. I collect them. I always have in all my travels. When I go to a bazaar in the Middle East or a market in South America or whatever it might be, if there's one souvenir I'm going to come back with, it's going to be something somebody made out of fiber yarn into some textile that's exotic or interesting. And so, to be honest, all of this is kind of an extension of that. That's why I enjoy it. A smart man would have quit this a long time ago.
But I remember you giving your presentation that first year I met you in Montana, and you were talking about your travels to China. So you've seen textile industries all over the world, right?
I have. I've been very fortunate. I've worked in Western Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, North Africa, West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, all around the Caribbean, Central America and South America, China, Thailand. If money were miles, I'd be a rich man.
Is there one place in particular that you think just is doing it right, or their materials that they're making are just the best?
That's an excellent question, Eric. Someplace where they're doing it right. Well, the places where they're doing it right are the places where they've adapted to the local markets and economies, and they're supplying a demand that allows them to create a value chain where people are rewarded for their efforts up and down that chain. And I remember particularly an underwear manufacturer in Peru who ended up setting up his own stores across Peru. I mean, he had like 40 stores, and he did a tremendous business. I mean, they have great cotton in Peru, and they have great textiles, and they have great needlework also from the people that are there in that craftsmanship of manufacturing. But that was a beautiful thing to see. And then a guy in Uganda who basically had a bonsai organic production facility, buying organic cotton from the growers in the mountains, and was ginning it himself and spinning yarn and weaving fabric and knitting fabric and dyeing and finishing it, all within a facility that was smaller than a city block.
Wow.
I remember Time Magazine Japan put him on the covers a few years back because they thought him to be the most interesting Japanese person outside of Japan. And so there's not one place, there's not one person, there's not one market. It's the way that markets evolve and entrepreneurs evolve to satisfy those markets. Mm-hmm. Those are the best places I've ever been.
Okay. When you look, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's what we hope to do here with hemp. Now we've started doing some finished good products, fully finished products like hats and socks and beanies. And hopefully we'll have t-shirts shortly, because it's been too difficult. I haven't been able to work with any brands carry through to fully finished product that's released in the United States.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do it ourselves.
There you go. I saw those socks and a few of your other products up on the mall in Washington last week at the National Hemp Association's booth. They had some bare fiber socks. I would love to buy some of those, so I'll be going to your website at some point, because you sell all that stuff retail on your website, right?
Yes, we do. More than a pair of socks. You did save my life.
Well, and I would do it again, Guy. I would do it again. So when you I have a bunch of questions, but when you pick up a piece of fabric or textile, like what stories are you able to sort of hear from that or read in that piece of work that maybe somebody without your background doesn't hear or see?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was weaving my first commercial order of fabric, and I was at a excellent quality, not the biggest in the world, but just really well run employees that thought they had one of the best jobs in the world and all this other stuff near Clemson, South Carolina. And the lady who was in charge of the rapier loom that was weaving the machine, she would happen to also be the training manager for that weaving mill, and she was also the floor supervisor for dozens and dozens and dozens of machines and the operators that handled them. Oddly enough, her husband was also the chief mechanic for the whole company. But I was standing with her, and we were watching that first run of fabric, and I was saying, this is the first run of American hemp fiber, American hemp yarn, into textiles in decades and decades and decades from a commercial perspective. And she looked at me without taking her eyes off the machine, because she was extremely focused on making sure that everything was running smoothly. She goes, "Yep, I know that." And it's more important than just us working. She goes, "Because it's farmers from here that are growing it also. And we're pulling in a new fiber that we haven't had available to us before. And it makes a difference. It means something." And about that time, something made a noise on the machine, and she yelled out in a voice that deafened me for a few moments, for her husband to come over, and then across this weaving room with scores of machines operating, and he came trotting over, and he fixed whatever it was, and we went through that day. And at the end of the day, the mill manager and I were at the machine, and he asking the lady who was running the machine if she wanted to just shut it down and start it back in the morning, or if she wanted to let, I think the name was Mary Margaret, handle it for the second shift. And I remember she looked over at her husband, who had come over also, and they both just imperceptibly shook their heads in a no. And she goes, "No, we'll just turn it off, and I'll get it going in the morning. It's too important." I later found out that Mary Margaret was their daughter, and they didn't trust her to handle the hemp with enough care on the second shift.
Wow. Uh-oh.
So what's inspiring to me is the way other people get inspired by this product.
Yeah.
And other people ask me for, when are we going to be able to get some of this? When are we going to be able to get some fabric and make some products with all this?
And what do you tell them?
As soon as I possibly damn can.
Right. What, I guess I don't mean in just your work, but like what else out there are you excited about? Like what cool products are you seeing being developed from hemp, either in textiles or out of textiles?
Well, I have a new partner, Geronimo Blancaflor, who came in with me several months ago, and we met, and we're specifically through a Department of Defense opportunity. And Geronimo's an Army veteran, as am I. I mean, he's retired Army. But he was a rigger, Special Forces, airborne, all this other stuff. And he has a knowledge of equipment in sewing and the cutting arts of fabric. And in the few months that he's been here with me, he's created dozens of potential products for us to put on the market. But at the same time, he's been working diligently on a product specifically for the Department of the Army. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to provide textiles that can assist our warfighters in survivability and combat capability. I think that's a real deal thing. I mean, hemp is strong, it's durable, it's abrasion resistant, and in a natural, technical manner. And with what we know about certain finishes and what may or may not be needed in certain zones of conflict, we can make it even more so and more adaptable for them.
That's excellent. Are you able to talk more specifically about those products you're developing for the Army, or is that just as far as you can go?
Well, I can talk generally and just say that the larger one, or the one that's got us consumed at the moment with another partner who's a specialist in dealing with the military bureaucracy and project implementation,
Mm-hmm.
is a fabric cover for Humvees, a new type of textile cover for Humvees,
Oh, wow.
either medical or for some other particular purpose.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm impressed with how the Army especially is exploring hemp. You know, this is interesting to hear about, but also their exploration of hempcrete building. One of the people I cover, Cameron McIntosh from Amerishon Cast Hemp, he's recently received it's like a small business innovation grant to sort of scale his business for hempcrete, because the U.S. Army wants to be a customer, right? They have a sort of a mandate to account for their carbon on all of the government property. So that's a huge thing for hemp.
Well, soldiers have to live here also. We all have to deal with what we do to the planet. And whether it's the fact that we're using a fiber or a combination of fibers that are technically superior to what is currently being offered, but that they're also biodegradable. I mean, we've worked on BDU, battle dress uniform, blouses and trousers also, and had some innovative products done through that. But the military is, they're not on duty 24/7 all the time. Well, they are, and mentally, but sometimes they got to relax too.
Yeah. Are you near Army bases there?
No, the nearest Army base is really Fort Liberty, which was formerly Fort Bragg, which is in Fayetteville.
Okay.
I think that's the closest one, but as far as Army goes. But here in North Carolina, it's a military-oriented state with Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, and Navy, I think, here somewhere.
Yeah.
Scattered all around.
Right. Can you talk about like your work with farmers? Are you involved in working with farmers in North Carolina to sort of get the fiber quality that you need?
Well, I was in the beginning. I even tried to do some farming myself for the first couple of years. And, it turns out that farming is not quite the same as gardening. And my trials were epically horrible. I quickly came to the realization that my job was to make money to pay the farmer a fair price for the job they did. But I am familiar. I've worked with farmers here and in other states, and certainly stay close to suppliers like I&D Hemp and their network of excellent farmers. And I have an amazing amount. I have an incredible amount of respect for them.
Yeah.
Because there was a big learning curve in the beginning. In the beginning, people were asking me, going, well, how deep should we plant the seed? And how high should we cut the stalk? And all this. And the only thing I knew to tell them was what I'd seen and learned in China.
Yeah.
But when I tried to plant it, either the hurricane knocked it down, or the drought shriveled it up, or the deer ate the shoots, or something, or the rain washed the seeds away. They might as well put Job's farm in front of where I was working.
So you've been in textiles your entire career, but you've only been working with hemp part of that time. Is that right?
I was Peace Corps out of college, and then I was military, and then I was in grad school, and as I said, then I fell into the fashion industry.
Okay.
And yeah, since that time, it's been 35 years.
All right. What'd you study in grad school?
MBA.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. So can you talk a bit about what the hemp industry is like in China? Like, what did you see there? What did you see? Farms? You saw factories? You saw processing?
Seen it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 20 years, 25 years buying from China. I have a close friend, brother, partner over there, Philip Liang, who were born on the same day, which is, of course, not only auspicious here in the United States, but particularly so in the Far East. And he's the one that taught me most of what I know about hemp and facilitated me getting in the doors of all the different processors, et cetera, across China.
Yeah. When's your birthday?
I'm not telling you.
Okay. Well, so describe the landscape there in China. Like, are there massive fields of hemp, or is it's smaller than, it's a small crop there, right?
It's a small crop compared to many of the other crops.
Yeah.
But you can still go to places and see 20,000 acres
Wow.
cultivation, or I think this year it was 160,000 hectares.
No kidding.
And so, no, it's not a small crop. What's interesting in the Chinese economy right now is that they contracted and they grew everything that they had programmed and foreseen hemp fiber wise. And the crop, there were some issues with drought and this and that, but anyway, they harvested what they needed, not what they wanted. But it turns out demand has increased threefold. So I see my contacts have reached out to me for the availability of American hemp fiber into China.
Oh, that's an interesting development.
Yeah. It hasn't worked out yet, but doesn't mean it won't.
Right.
I intend to go back over in the next month or two and see what it's going to take to make that happen. Because I'd rather keep the premium fiber here and use that with our American cotton, which is premium cotton also. But I'd rather keep that here, but there's a dearth, or there will be a dearth of, I won't call it the second grade, but I'll call it lesser quality than premium platinum grade. That, yes, can be exported and be used to make yarns which are not particularly refined, higher count yarns, such as in the shirt I think you're wearing. Oh, you got a hoodie on, don't you?
I got a hoodie on. I got a t-shirt on here.
Yeah, well, like that t-shirt's probably a 20 singles. And that's a good standard yarn, but it's not the same yarn that you would use for a men's dress shirt
Okay.
or a woman's blouse or something like that. That would be a 30 singles and above. And so yarns, hemp fibers that can be used to blend with Chinese cotton over there, that's satisfying the Chinese market. I mean, they're not going to buy finished goods from us.
Right.
But if we can get more fiber over there into production and process, so much the better. And I will say this also. I have a lot of friends in the hemp industry in China. A lot. Dozens and dozens and dozens. And every single one of them has been nothing but positive and helpful in trying to help the American industry get started. They know that the more demand we can create and the more zing we can bring to the product category and story, it's going to create demand in the U.S., and that's great, and hopefully we'll get satisfy that ourselves, but it's going to create even more demand globally, and they're going to get that because we just don't grow enough yet.
Right. What can we learn from the Chinese, either in like what not to do or what to do? Are there some lessons there to learn?
Well, that's a good question. Most people believe that the manner of degumming in China is less than desirable, that there's environmental considerations that they don't take consideration of.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing could be further from the truth. It's so difficult to open up any kind of factory that uses chemicals, that does dyeing and finishing or whatever it might be. In China right now, they increased the strictness of their laws, their environmental control laws, 5 years ago. And at that time, almost half the dyeing and finishing facilities in China closed.
Oh, wow.
And the guy I know that has the newest facility in China, I know that just for their degumming efforts, they spent almost $2.5 million on their water reclamation to clean the discharge, which wasn't that bad anyway, but to meet standards and to not be in violation of the law,
mm-hmm.
That's what it cost them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did they do chemical retting or water retting or field retting over there?
They do retting, field retting, because it's free.
Yeah. Okay.
Degumming is done in an alkaline process. It's actually the same process I use here in the United States.
And that's what breaks down the lignins that holds all the fiber together?
That's correct. It holds the fiber and ribbons or bands together as a gum. And we basically need to wash it out and get it out so that we can separate the individual fibers.
Okay. Can you talk about like the effect that retting or the different styles of retting would then have on the finished fabric?
Well, retting is, of course, what happens after the stalk is cut. And what you want to do is degrade the pectin, which gums the fiber to the hurd. And you want to degrade that so that during the decortication process, you don't have to be so abusive on the stalk that you're also damaging the fiber. So retting is it's a efficient manner depending upon the climate and the geographical zone you're in. You need to have dew in the evenings or the mornings or both, and maybe even an occasional rain. And that's when you start to see that discoloration of the stalk. And it starts to get darker because the bacteria are digesting that pectin, are transforming it. And the darker it gets, the better they've done their job. And if people have opinions about this color or that color, and that color is basically the degradation of the pectin. It's got nothing to do with the fiber itself. You're going to wash that color out no matter what. And there's enzyme retting, which is becoming more and more of a consideration. And we're not sure. We don't have a process in place here, and they don't really have a firm process in place in China yet. But I was actually visiting a friend last week whose daughter is still in high school, and she's doing a science paper on enzyme retting of hemp stalks for fiber, which I thought was fascinating and extremely encouraging.
What other goals do you have? Like, is there something that you kind of have in your mind as that's what I want to achieve with this work?
Yeah, I want to make underwear.
All kinds of underwear?
Hemp cotton underwear, yeah.
All
I
right.
don't lingerie. I just want to make underwear. I think hemp's a great fiber for that. And I think we can make it better, make it last longer, make it be cleaner, and it'll be a good way to get it in everybody's household.
There you go. All right. You mentioned that, as you travel around the world, you'll bring something home, some handcrafted thing, probably some sort of textile. Can you talk about like one of your favorite pieces that you found and what really like captured your imagination about it?
Behind me on the wall is an intricate embroidery from Thailand. from the mountains that involves not only religious symbols but flowers. To my left is are two different fabrics from West Africa. Uh, One is a wax print, and the other one is an indigo wax dye, but it's natural indigo. I had an African mud print up over here where the dyes used are natural earths.
Oh, wow.
Over there, on another wall is a Middle Eastern scarf that's kind of well known if you hang out around Palestine. And oh yeah, and there's a purple leopard running through a village on a wax print from Africa there.
Huh.
And I like all kinds of textiles.
Yeah. Is there a part of the world that you haven't been to that you would like to get to?
Never been to New Zealand or Australia.
Oh, okay.
And even though textiles, I'm curious about what they're doing with wool there, but I'd like to see that anyway, just for the natural beauty I hear is there.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of places I haven't been that I still need to get to as soon as I can.
All right. Well, what's next for you in Bear Fiber?
Well, we actually have a conference tomorrow and the day after in Raleigh, North Carolina called DefTex, Defense Textiles. And a representative from all the armed services will be there. And it'll allow us to have a clearer view of what some of the wants and needs the different branches of the military are, to see if there's something we can do for them.
Yeah.
The government in general wants to go to biodegradable fibers as much as possible. That's not possible in every consideration. I mean, you can't make a parachute out of hemp. At least, I don't think so. But
who would test that, right?
Yeah, probably Geronimo. He'll do it. But they made sails out of it, so it's just sailing slower down to the ground. That defense textiles is going to be interesting. Then there's some trade shows coming up. Advanced Textile Association, Fashion Fabrics, et cetera, and we'll probably be visiting all of them.
All right. Sounds like you got a busy summer ahead of you.
And we've got, of course, the Panda Hemp opening coming up. I'm looking forward to that.
Are you going out there for the opening?
Uh-huh.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then IND is this fall.
Yeah.
Seeing you there, if not before that.
Yeah. When is the Panda opening?
It's in June.
Okay.
June 12th.
June 12th. All right. Interesting. I'm getting back from Europe, I think on the 8th or 9th. Not sure I can get to Texas in that short a time. But yeah, I interviewed, I guess, Scott Evans from Panda a couple of months ago. And that's super exciting what they're doing there. Like just right out of the gate, the largest textile processing facility for hemp in North America. That's pretty cool.
And yeah, Scott's a great guy, and what he's done for the Carter family in building that facility and getting it organized. A couple of years ago, they called me, and they were looking. Bob Carter, the primary behind all this, is he decided he was going to invest in hemp one way or the other. And he went through a number of different iterations with Scott, and they finally decided that fiber was the way. And I consulted for them for a good while, for like a year and a half.
Okay.
And helped them find their path.
Right. He said something that stuck with me. He's like, look, we're Panda Energy, and we know how to build facilities, right? So we're not just going to build this one in Texas, but we're going to get this one set up and then start looking around for other places. At which point I was like, hey, come to Pennsylvania.
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, Guy Carpenter, it is great to talk to you today. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for telling me stories. And
thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want listeners to know about Bear Fiber before we let you get back to your busy life?
Well, I was going to tell you, my son Clyde, who's been working with me, recently took a new position in New York State with Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in developing and directing a fiber and yarn and textile lab specifically to implement hemp fiber opportunities for farmers in New York State and also wool. But it's very encouraging that there's other places, there's a push going on that, for the past few years, sometimes you feel kind of lonely out here.
Yeah, cool. That's great. I should reach out to, you said, which?
Clyde.
Your son, Clyde.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. That would make a great podcast episode. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's going to combine all the SUNY State University of New York systems, including IT in New York City, the Fashion Food Technology, and some others. So the Northeast is going to be hopping soon.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. Well, I'll reach out to Clyde and we'll try to put something together on that. And all right, Guy Carpenter, again, it's so great to talk to you. Thank you for what you do. Thanks for being in the world, and thank you for the time you spent with me today.
Appreciate it, Eric. It's a pleasure and a privilege.
Likewise. All right, there you go. Guy Carpenter from Bear Fiber in North Carolina. We mentioned a couple times an incident on the Missouri River happened last summer. So just to give you a little context, the Missouri River flows along the edge of the town of Fort Benton in Montana. In the summer, people float down the river, right? They get tubes and they put in upstream and they float downstream. It's so much fun, but the river is wider and faster than you think, and it can catch you off guard. So last year at the Montana Hemp Summit, as people were coming into town in the beginning of the week, Ken Elliott asked if I would take a group of people out on the river because he knew that I could handle it. I had done it before. So I took Guy Carpenter, Mandy Kerr, and Jamie Petty on a little float. And as we were climbing onto our individual tubes, Guy his tube shot out from under him and he went under. And before I knew what I was doing, I just grabbed him and picked him up and I stuck him on his tube. And he credits me for saving his life because, I imagine from his perspective, that was kind of terrifying to just suddenly be underwater in this big, powerful river. So anyway, I am just thankful that I had the wherewithal to do that, and it shows how just a tiny action can have a huge impact on someone's life. So anyway, my name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. And hey, do you know that we have another podcast? It's called Farmhouse, and it focuses on women in agriculture. So check that out too. I'll have links to everything you heard on this show on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. Until next week, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Podcast is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.